You poured your heart and soul into a world-changing idea, only to watch someone else reap all the rewards. From groundbreaking machines to everyday lifesavers, the path to profit can be as rocky as creating the invention itself. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 unlucky inventors who never got to cash in on their inventions. 25. Charles Babbage. Even though computers are everywhere today, including in our pockets, this guy never got to see just how far his invention would go, or how much profit he could have made. Often called the father of computing, Charles Babbage designed the difference engine, and the more ambitious analytical engine, but never saw a full working prototype in his lifetime. The British Parliament initially granted him funding, only to withdraw their support when the project ran over budget and behind schedule. As a result, his machines remained mostly on paper drawings and partial assemblies. In the mid-1830s, the analytical engine was designed to execute a myriad of mathematical operations, utilizing punched cards for instructions. It contained a memory unit capable of storing an impressive 1,000 numbers, each containing 50 digits. Although the analytical engine remained unfinished, it was Ada Lovelace, a brilliant mathematician and Babbage's collaborator, who, in 1843, translated a French paper on the engine, creating what is often celebrated as the first computer program. Babbage's revolutionary designs faded into obscurity until their rediscovery in 1937, sparking renewed interest in his genius. His contributions extended far beyond computing. He played a pivotal role in shaping England's modern postal system, developed reliable actuarial tables, and invented various ingenious devices, including a speedometer and the locomotive cowcatcher. Babbage's legacy is a testament to the power of human ingenuity and imagination. Despite the enduring impact of his theoretical designs, he died in relative obscurity and without any financial reward for his visionary contributions. 24. John Gorrie. The next man on this list, I know rather well, because he's a legend here in Florida, where most people would never have chosen to live if it weren't for his invention. In fact, my elementary school in Tampa was even named after him. Gorrie's invention originated from his efforts to cure yellow fever during an outbreak in Apalachicola in 1841. Believing that cold could promote healing, he recommended using ice to cool sick rooms and reduce fevers. Initially, ice was transported by boat from northern lakes, but Gorrie eventually succeeded in developing a method for refrigeration through rapid gas expansion. Yet, courtroom battles drained his finances. Creditors seized his patent rights, and he spent his final years in debtor's prison while southern plantation owners used his basic cooling concepts for their own enterprises. Although modern air conditioning traces its roots back to Gorrie's invention, his name faded into the background of technological history. He died penniless before seeing the widespread application of mechanical refrigeration that would one day transform buildings around the world. 23. Rudolf Diesel. Yes, Vin Diesel may have been a stage name for Mark Sinclair Vincent, but this guy was the real deal. And for that reason, you'll probably see his name at gas stations everywhere. He designed the first compression ignition engine in 1892, offering far greater efficiency than steam or gasoline engines of his day. He also invented diesel fuel. That and the engine which runs it are both named after him. Diesel realized that steam engines wasted up to 90% of their fuel's energy, so he engineered a machine that compressed air internally until it heated enough to ignite injected fuel spontaneously. This compression ignition approach could run on petroleum or vegetable-based fuels, and delivered fuel efficiency more than 3 times higher than a typical steam engine. Diesel secured patents across Europe and the US, yet he faced constant legal disputes over patent rights and heavy licensing fees demanded by manufacturers. His ambitious tours to promote the engine drained his finances as companies balked at paying royalties. In 1913, while en route to a conference on his own ship, Diesel vanished overboard under mysterious circumstances and was declared lost at sea. By the time the diesel engine became the backbone of maritime, rail, and heavy-duty road transport, He had neither regained his fortune nor lived to see how transformative his invention would be. 22. Alexander Miles. In the late 1800s, this African-American inventor patented a mechanism for automatically closing elevator doors to protect passengers. Alexander Miles found his inspiration either in the faint clatter of an adjacent elevator at his St. Louis barbershop or in a frightening near miss when he rode with his daughter and the shaft doors stayed open. Determined to prevent such accidents, he devised a system using a flexible belt on the elevator cage that engaged drums positioned above and below each floor. This belt tripped a series of levers and rollers to open and close the shaft and car doors automatically at the correct levels. Miles secured a patent for this safer, more convenient method in 1887. Yet, building owners rarely adapted his design without the backing of larger manufacturers. Although, to be fair, when Miles and his family relocated once more to Seattle, he was known as the wealthiest African American in the Pacific Northwest region, but he eventually returned to working as a barber. Modern elevator safety standards still rely on concepts he pioneered, but Miles never received the licensing fees or acclaim owed to him. His patent lapsed, and the industry moved forward on alternate technologies that overshadowed his contribution. 21. Alan Turing. Turing has been called a founder of computer science, mathematician, philosopher, codebreaker, and a gay man before his time. Alan Turing is best known as a computer scientist. In 1936, he introduced the concept of the universal Turing machine, which formed the basis for the first computer. He also created a test for artificial intelligence in 1950 that's still used today. Besides his work in computing, Turing studied physics in his youth. He explored Einstein's theory of relativity as a teen and filled a notebook with his insights. After World War II, he investigated quantum mechanics, biology, chemistry, and neurology, driven by a desire to create machines that could learn and think, and a curiosity about the world. Despite this monumental insight, he never patented his computing concepts and worked under government secrecy during World War II. After admitting his homosexuality, Turing was forced to undergo chemical castration, which left him impotent and with breast enlargement. Yet, he met it with humor and defiance, continuing his work as if nothing had happened. Losing his security clearance over the conviction cut off his ability to travel abroad, a blow that many believe contributed to his tragic decision to take his own life. By the time the world recognized the significance of his work, the era of open academic research had begun, and his ideas entered the public domain. Although universities and tech pioneers built upon his theories, Turing himself never profited from the digital revolution he helped spark. 20. John Loud. He patented the first ballpoint pen design in 1888, a solution to a record-high viscosity materials on rough surfaces. His prototype used a steel ball that rotated in a socket, yet cartridges and ink formulations of his day could not keep up with the mechanism. John Loud attended Harvard College to become a lawyer and later worked as a cashier at the Union National Bank in Weymouth, Massachusetts. He was deeply involved in his community, serving as an active church member, a trustee for various local organizations, and a participant in historical societies. In 1888, Loud secured a patent for the world's first ballpoint pen. Though Loud secured that patent, his design never saw widespread commercial adoption, and it eventually expired. It would be another 50 years before Laszlo Biro patented the first practical ballpoint pen in 1938. It was decades later that pens hit the market and turned into a global staple. Too late for Loud to claim a single royalty. 19. Elijah McCoy. Famous for his automatic lubricator for steam engines, he held over 50 patents related to oil delivery. His device vastly improved machinery life and efficiency, but manufacturers often bought cheaper imitations marketed as the real McCoy. That phrase likely comes from Elijah McCoy's 1872 oil drip cup invention, as railroad engineers would ask if a locomotive carried the real McCoy system to avoid inferior copies. The earliest printed reference appears in a December 1966 ebony advertisement for Old Taylor Bourbon, which celebrated McCoy's legacy with the line, "But the most famous legacy McCoy left his country was his name." This phrase became synonymous with authenticity, Yet McCoy himself saw little financial benefit. He spent years fighting counterfeiters in court and died having earned far less than the economic value his inventions provided the industry. And of course, he never got to hear Real McCoy, the 90s techno band, either, so he really missed out on that one. 18. Mary Van Brittan Brown. In 1966, she built the first home video security system using a closed-circuit camera and a two-way microphone to monitor her New York apartment. Police response to emergencies improved, but her design was dismissed by law enforcement agencies and property developers. Born in Queens in 1922, she worked as a nurse while her husband, Albert Brown, was an electronics technician. Living in a high-crime neighborhood with slow police response times, she devised a setup of 3 peepholes at different heights, a movable camera, home monitors, and a two-way audio link, plus an alarm button to summon help instantly. She filed her patent, titled Home Security System Utilizing Television Surveillance, in 1966, and it was granted 3 years later. Her design laid the groundwork for today's video doorbells, remote-controlled locks, push-button alarms, real-time alerts, and two-way voice communication. 13 later patents have cited her work, and her system remains in use in homes and small businesses around the world. But she never secured widespread commercial contracts. She received no licensing payouts and continued her nursing career as companies profited from her concept. 17. Spencer Silver. You might be surprised to learn that this inventor helps most of us communicate with each other and even just organize our own thoughts to this day. Ever use a Post-it note? In 1968, Spencer Silver was working on new adhesive formulas at 3M when he stumbled on an acrylic glue made of tiny spheres that offered strong stickiness but low pull-off force. The material seemed like a failure until Art Fry, another researcher, coated paper with it to create repositionable notes. After years spent perfecting the adhesive's consistency and designing the specialized equipment to manufacture the pads, Post-it notes debuted nationwide in 1980 and quickly became an office essential. They went on to rank among the 5 best-selling office products in the US and helped earn 3M the National Medal of Technology in 1995. Silver, a San Antonio native with a PhD from the University of Colorado, spent 3 decades at 3M exploring polymers, protein diagnostics, and adhesives. In 1988, he received the American Chemical Society's Medal for Creative Invention in honor of his groundbreaking discovery. Now, Silver himself received recognition, but without the fortune the office staple generated. You see, 3M had a policy that limited the financial gain an individual employee could make from their inventions, even for highly successful ones like Post-it notes. This strategy was in place to encourage a free exchange of ideas among employees. As a result, neither Silver nor Fry were entitled to any royalties from the millions of dollars 3M made from Post-it notes. 16. Theodore Maiman. You know, I have one simple request, and that's to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads. Now, evidently, my cycloptic colleague informs me that can't be done. Can you remind me what I pay you people for? Honestly. Well, if it weren't for the next guy on our list, Dr. Evil would have been even more frustrated because lasers wouldn't exist. Theodore Maiman worked at Hughes Research Laboratories to pursue the idea of amplifying light and chose to experiment with a synthetic ruby rod, discovering that its fluorescence efficiency had been underestimated. In 1960, he produced the first working laser when a burst of photons escaped the rod's mirrored ends as a coherent beam of red light. The word laser itself is an acronym for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. After initial rejection from one journal, his paper appeared in Nature later that year. Maiman left HRL in 1962 to launch Corad Corporation and went on to found 2 more laser companies before serving as vice president at TRW. His ruby laser opened fields as diverse as surgery, telecom, and entertainment, but he missed key patent deadlines in international markets. This oversight allowed competitors to secure crucial rights and left Maiman without substantial earnings from his groundbreaking work. 15. Percy Spencer. Next time you reheat your leftovers, you can thank this next inventor on our list. Percy Spencer left school at 12 to work in a weaving mill and joined the Navy at 18 as a radio operator. While on duty, he taught himself calculus and physics from textbooks. After World War II, he went to work at Raytheon, where he and his team produced radar equipment using the cavity magnetron and developed processes to mass produce it. For these contributions, he received the Distinguished Public Service Award from the U.S. Navy. One day, he noticed a chocolate bar in his pocket melting near an active magnetron and decided to test popcorn kernels next to the device. To his amazement, they popped, and that observation led him to experiment with cooking by microwave energy. He and Raytheon filed a patent in 1945 for a microwave cooking oven, and it was granted 5 years later. The first commercial model, called the Radar Range, appeared in 1947, weighing 750 pounds, costing $3,000, and standing 6 feet tall, with home-style versions not arriving until about 20 years later. Raytheon held the commercial patents and sold machines under restrictive corporate terms. Spencer received a one-time bonus, but no continuing royalties, even as home microwaves became ubiquitous and highly profitable. 14. Sir Frank Whittle. As a young Royal Air Force cadet, he sketched the turbojet engine and patented his design in 1930. Government and industry delays slowed development, so his first flight came years after rival projects abroad. Sir Frank Whittle was born in 1907 to a mechanically gifted father who ran a small engineering firm. He won a scholarship to Leamington College for Boys and spent spare hours building model planes. Determined to fly, he applied twice to the RAF apprentice scheme before being accepted at age 16. While at the RAF college, he wrote a thesis proving that a gas turbine could propel aircraft. He filed his turbojet patent in January 1930 and saw it published in 1931, but lack of funds forced him to let it lapse in 1934. Undeterred, he formed Powerjets Limited, and in 1937 had run the first practical turbojet engine at Rugby. The debut flight of the jet-powered Gloucester E-28 took place in 1941. Whittle battled chronic funding shortfalls, lost patent control amid government and industry maneuvers, and watched larger firms take over production. He was awarded a CBE in 1944, but received little personal profit as jet propulsion transformed aviation and defense. Whittle was promoted to Air Commodore in 1944 and stayed in the RAF until ill health forced his retirement in 1948. Soon after, he received a £100,000 payout and was knighted. In 1976, he divorced his wife Dorothy and married his longtime friend Hazel, then moved to the US, where he died in 1966 at the age of 89. 13. Tim Berners-Lee. In 1989, he proposed a hypertext system that became the World Wide Web and released his software royalty-free. This altruistic choice enabled global adoption and the birth of today's internet economy. Millions of businesses have built fortunes on top of his protocols, yet he never collected licensing fees. Instead, he focused on governance and equitable access, cementing his legacy in public service rather than personal profit. 12. Hedy Lamarr. I bet you never imagined owing a debt of gratitude to a movie star for your Bluetooth headphones, your home internet, or the map on your phone you use to navigate the world. Hollywood star and inventor, she helped conceive of a frequency hopping technique to guide torpedoes around signal jamming during World War II. Hedy Lamarr was born Hedwig Eva Maria Keisler in Vienna, Austria, to a father who directed a bank and a mother who was a concert pianist. After moving to Hollywood and becoming a leading actress, she never lost her curiosity for science and technology. In 1940, she met composer and inventor George Antheil, and together they devised a method of frequency hopping that would foil enemy jamming of radio-controlled torpedoes. They received a patent for the system in 1941. Decades later, this idea became a foundation for modern wireless technologies such as Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. She later received late career awards, but no substantial compensation from the industries built on her idea. 11. Chester Carlson. Chester Carlson began experimenting with dry image copying in 1935, studying physics by day at the New York Public Library and tinkering in a small Astoria lab outfitted with little more than a cigar box and a coffee can. He invented xerography in 1938 as a dry image copying method that transformed offices. Despite holding key patents, Carlson faced over 20 rejections before Battelle Memorial Institute agreed to help develop the process. In 1959, more than 2 decades after his breakthrough, Haloid's first plain paper xerographic copier brought the technology into offices worldwide. And just like Kleenex and Jacuzzi, Xerox came to be synonymous with the product it sold. Early backers dismissed the technology as impractical, so he struggled to find corporate partners. Eventually, a major laboratory took up his patents, but negotiated a deal that granted Carlson only a small share of the profits. As photocopiers became essential office equipment, his return remained small compared to the billions of dollars the technology generated. 10. Johannes Gutenberg. Speaking of people who revolutionized printing for no payback, this 15th century goldsmith introduced movable type printing to Europe and triggered a cultural revolution. He borrowed heavily to fund his press operations and faced legal disputes that stripped him of his printing workshop. In 1455, Johann Fust sued Gutenberg for failing to repay 2 loans totaling 1,600 guilders and accused him of misusing the funds. The court ruled in Fust's favor, giving him control of the workshop and leaving Gutenberg effectively bankrupt. Despite this setback, Gutenberg resurfaced in Bamberg around 1459 and may have supplied type for a locally printed Bible. However, none of those books carried his name or a date, and historians still debate his exact role. In the meantime, Fust's partner, Peter Schoeffer, published the Main Psalter in August 1457, the first European book to bear the printer's name and date, yet it made no mention of Gutenberg's pioneering work. Gutenberg spent his last years under the protection of a local archbishop, living in modest comfort. While his inventions spread knowledge far and wide, he never enjoyed the wealth that his press ultimately created for others. 9. Edwin Armstrong. He invented frequency modulation radio in the 1930s, offering clearer sound free of static. Large broadcast corporations saw FM as a threat to their existing amplitude modulation networks. Armstrong fought patent lawsuits for years, draining his personal resources. He died still embroiled in litigation and without the financial vindication owed to the pioneer of high-fidelity radio. Federal Judge Edmund L. Palmieri has upheld Major Edwin Howard Armstrong's FM patents, ruling that Emerson Radio infringed rights going back to 1933. His widow, Esther Armstrong, collected damages. He earned over $4 million in royalties, received both the Franklin Medal and the Edison Medal, and continued inventing until he died in 1954, although he had little to no money by the time he died. 8. Antonio Meucci. Hold the phone. Did you know this guy actually invented the telephone? No, it's not who you think. An Italian immigrant, Meucci created a voice transmission device in the 1850s and filed a caveat for his invention. After his theatrical contract ended, Antonio Meucci and his ailing wife moved to Staten Island, where he launched a candle mill and later a brewery. Both ventures failed, leaving him bankrupt, but still living in his house. Motivated by his wife's illness, he spent 20 years crafting a voice link between her bedroom and his workshop, and filed for a teletrofono patent. Lacking the $10 to renew it, he watched as Bell's telephone company swept the market. Meucci sued Bell in 1885, and the litigation dragged on until 1897 with no decisive outcome. In 2002, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution recognizing his role in inventing the telephone, though controversy over credit endures. His vision of connecting people survives in every modern phone call and wireless link. Meucci petitioned Congress for recognition in his final years and received symbolic credit long after his death. He never saw the royalties from the communication revolution his early work enabled. 7. Garrett Morgan. If you've ever gotten the green light on a project or simply driven around town, chances are you've driven past this next invention without even knowing about Garrett Morgan. He patented the 3-position traffic signal in 1916 and sold the rights to General Electric, but for a fraction of its true value. The first American manufactured automobiles appeared around 1900, and often shared roads with horse-drawn carriages and bicycles. After witnessing a collision between a car and a carriage, Garrett Morgan saw the need for better traffic control and secured a patent in 1923 for a 3-position traffic signal. Morgan's design added a middle all-stop setting to the existing stop and go commands so that all directions halted before traffic resumed. In low-volume periods, it could be set to a caution mode, much like today's flashing signals. He sold the rights to General Electric for $40,000, and his system was used across North America until red, yellow, and green lights became standard. Shortly before his death in 1963, Morgan received a government citation for his invention. Morgan used the modest earnings to launch a life insurance company serving African American communities, but never recouped the full market potential of his safety inventions. He died respected, yet undercompensated for his contributions. 6. Mary Anderson. And while you're driving around thanking Garrett Morgan for traffic lights, be glad you can see the lights at all through your windshield, especially in bad weather. In 1903, Mary Anderson patented window sash that could be operated from inside a vehicle to wipe moisture away. Automakers mocked the idea, saying drivers wouldn't want to open their windows in bad weather. She patented a spring-loaded rubber blade moved by an interior lever and counterweight so drivers could keep their windows clear without stepping outside. By 1922, Cadillac was fitting her invention as standard equipment on its cars. After her patent lapsed, independent manufacturers entered the market, profiting off her concept. Anderson never earned a dime, even though windshield wipers quickly became standard on every car. 5. Charles Goodyear. And neither of the previous two inventors would have made the history books if not for this next inventor on our list. His accidental discovery of vulcanized rubber in 1844 revolutionized tires and industrial seals. He spent years touring Europe and the US demonstrating his process, but Reactive Partners declared bankruptcy to avoid royalties. Goodyear died bankrupt in 1860 when his creditors seized his assets. Although Goodyear's discovery of vulcanization transformed the rubber industry, he died insolvent and never reaped its rewards. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company that carries his name was established decades after his passing and had no involvement from him. Despite the global impact of his process, Goodyear struggled with financial woes and died owing the equivalent of millions today. 4. Philo Farnsworth. By 1922, Philo Farnsworth determined that mechanical scanning methods were too slow and charted a purely electronic path to television. While still in high school, he outlined the core design, then partnered in 1926 with George Everson and Leslie Gorrie. After moving to LA and spending the initial $6,000, he secured $25,000 and lab space from Crocker First National Bank. On September 7, 1927, he made the first successful electronic TV transmission and filed his patent that same year. In 1930, RCA attempted to buy his image dissector tube for $100,000, but Farnsworth refused. He later licensed patents with AT&T in 1937 and survived lengthy court battles with RCA, which by 1939 agreed to pay him royalties. Despite nervous breakdowns and wartime shifts, his company produced its first TV set in 1947, cementing his role as the father of electronic television. Farnsworth fought legal battles but settled for licensing deals that provided minimal proceeds. He died before TV networks became the multi-billion-dollar industry he helped invent. 3. Nikola Tesla. He perfected alternating current motors and dynamos powering cities across the globe. Despite the scale of his achievements, he sold patents to rival backers for quick cash, underestimating the value of his ideas. In 1884, a 28-year-old Nikola Tesla arrived in New York with 4 cents and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison. Hired at $18 a week and promised a $50,000 bonus for improving Edison's direct current motors, Tesla delivered the results in 2 months, only to be told the offer was a joke. He quit on the spot. He then launched the Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing Company, which collapsed, forcing him to dig ditches to make ends meet. Tesla's true breakthrough came with his alternating current motor patent in 1888, which he licensed to George Westinghouse for royalties in stock. When Westinghouse faced bankruptcy during the fierce war of the currents with Edison, Tesla tore up his royalty agreement to keep the company afloat in exchange for a lump sum payment. Those forfeited royalties would have made him the world's first billionaire. Tesla spent his final years living in a New York hotel, feeding pigeons and chasing new concepts. He died in 1943, alone, bankrupt, and largely forgotten, even as power companies profited immensely from his pioneering work. 2. George Ferris. He engineered the giant wheel for the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago to demonstrate American ingenuity. The project required more capital than expected, and he borrowed heavily from private investors. At 34, George Ferris's giant wheel became the star attraction of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, carrying 1.5 million riders over 6 months and grossing $750,000 on a $364,000 build. Disputes over how to split the remaining profits after costs left Ferris far poorer than he had anticipated. When attendance fell short of projections, he could not service his debts. Caught in costly litigation, his health suffered and his marriage collapsed. In 1896, he became ill with typhoid fever and died in the hospital at the age of 37, his one great triumph overshadowed by financial and personal ruin. Ferris did not live to see his wheel replicated around the world as a beloved amusement attraction. 1. Lee DeForest. Listen up! Known as the father of radio, he invented the Audion vacuum tube that amplified electrical signals. Early audio broadcasting pioneers used his tube, but large corporations challenged his patent claims in court. Lee DeForest's first company went bankrupt by 1906 after partners defrauded him. In 1907, he patented the Audion, the first triode vacuum tube capable of sensitive wireless reception. He used it to broadcast Enrico Caruso live in 1910, and in 1912 devised cascaded tubes for huge signal amplification and a feedback method for self-oscillation, transforming radio transmissions and reception. Despite these advances, DeForest struggled with lawsuits and sold his key patents, often at low prices, to major firms like AT&T. He went on to develop the phonofilm, sound-on-film system, pioneering sound in movies. After decades of litigation, his earnings from the Audion were minimal compared to the vast fortunes radio networks made. He died in 1961, having paved the way for broadcast media, yet without the financial rewards he deserved. And that's a wrap for today. But before you go, quick trivia question. Which inventor fought long patent battles and died amid financial strain despite creating a major broadcast technology? A. Edwin Armstrong. B. Garrett Morgan. C. Tim Berners-Lee. Or D. Philo Farnsworth. Drop your pick in the comments and see who really knows their history. Now, if you enjoyed this dive into unlucky inventors, you need to check out our recent video, 25 historical figures who were initially called crazy, but were right all along. To check it out, click right here. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. Check out our social medias, check out my social medias, do all that fun stuff. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you next time.